Trajal Harrell, or you could pronounce my name Trajal or Trajal. Some people say Trajal. There's no exact pronunciation. I'm a dancer choreographer, originally from Georgia in the United States, but I spent my beginning part of my career in New York City. And in 2025, I will be the associate artist of the Holland Festival.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Well, welcome to the Balie on behalf of the Holland Festival. And welcome to the people watching on the live stream. My name is Maarten van Hinte. I'm a writer-director and a dramaturg with Right About Now, Inc. And I will be having this conversation with Trajal, which is a very big honor for me. Extremely happy to have this conversation, this encounter. We'll be delving in his work. You just heard it on the film, but he's a dancer, a choreographer, but also associate artist this year for Holland Festival, so he's a curator. And we'll have this conversation, but towards the end, I'll have room for questions as well. Yes? Okay, I'll slow it down. So I said dancer, choreographer, curator, associate artist, but also an explorer. This time around at the festival. You have welcome to the Asbestos Hall as a space where you're really exploring new stuff, not just presenting, but really delving into all kinds of adventures. So for those of you who don't know, Asbestos Hall, welcome to Asbestos Hall is taking place in the Like Minds Theater in Amsterdam-Noord. Days of experimentation and rehearsal with musicians, dancers, creatives, and presentations in the evening called visits, plus encounters, plus meetings, plus discussions, actually, and parties as well, not forgetting the parties. What's that like? How is it happening?
It's happening. I mean, I think the best thing about it is that it has a life of its own, and people use it, are exploring it, or have their own rehearsals, their workshops. It's more than me. I mean, and that's what's really nice, is that it's generating something. And just, I don't know, I love the way people, like, especially when it's nice, people are like there in the front, like sitting down, talking, having conversations. I don't know, I just really love this feeling. I think it reminds me a lot when I started out as a young choreographer in New York, and this strong sense of community and people taking time to really see work together and talk about it, or just like waste time together. I think wasting time is really kind of an important virtue.
You haven't wasted a lot of time in your career. So are you now catching up to the wasting, which is wonderful. I mean, of course, you've had, I mean, running a company is very different from taking really time to explore, I think. Or is it?
Well, I mean, I think that's one of the perceptions about my career, but I started, my first piece is in 1999, and the first time I have any touring is 2007. So I had 8 years in New York where no one was really, I was not under pressure, you know, and that's what I mean. That period of time was really good because we didn't have touring networks.
No.
It was, you know, you made a show and maybe you got to do it 4 nights out of the year, 4 times, and then you started again.
Yeah.
And that was so important to us, though, and because we, you know, I had 4 jobs, so, you know, it was a different life, and so but I think that was really important because I didn't have eyes looking on me. I just had to make my work in a way to learn how to be the artist I wanted to be. I didn't have the pressure to fill the seats. I didn't have the pressure to critics. You know, none of that was really in the ballpark. So I think those 8 years really gave me a lot. You know, so by the time I did start to get international invitations, I knew more or less who I was as an artist, or at least who I wanted to be, what direction I want to go in, and to a certain degree, what my strengths and weaknesses were.
What was it that triggered you to want to be an artist, to start to go into those 8 years?
An artist or a choreographer?
Well, actually, artist, whatever you would mention first, artist and then choreographer?
I mean, I think that I don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg, but I'll say this, that I grew up in southern Georgia, and it took me a long time to realize like that I had a kind of, I mean, my grandfather sung the blues on the porch every day came home from school, and I thought everybody's grandfather sung the blues on the porch, you know? And my grandmother talked in this way, like she had all these poetic ways of saying things like, I don't know, like, hard head makes a soft butt. You know, like she was always speaking in rhythmic, and so it was very, like I grew up around a lot of poetry and a lot of, like they didn't think of themselves as artists, but the way they spoke, the way, the lyricism in their language, this southern dialect, my grandfather humming on the porch every afternoon. I came home from school, my grandparents always waiting on the porch, you know, for me to come from school, and my grandfather there humming, and so I think that this gave me a kind of and my uncle always used to dance with me. My uncle would always come. We lived in a small town in Southeast Georgia, but I had an uncle who was very like sophisticated and lived in Atlanta. And he would come with his suits and his hat, and he would always like dance with me. And I just thought he was just the coolest cat, you know, because he was. And so I had these characters around me, but they didn't consider themselves artists in a professional way, but they were really creative people. So I think that was kind of ingrained in me, and my cousins always said I was the one who could not dance. And they were like, that boy cannot dance. So there was that, and you know, I often tell this story that I was a gymnast, and I told my grandfather, the grandfather that sung on the porch was my mother's father, but my father's father would pick me up after gymnastics practice. But I told him that my gymnastics ended at 4, but it actually ended at 3, because between 3 and 4, I always sat in the doorway and watched the girls' ballet class. And no one ever asked me, like no one in the gym, no one ever said a word. No one asked why, no one said you can't do it, nothing. No one ever said anything, but I was sitting there watching them. And so I think, looking back, I think that this must have been the beginning of me and my desire to watch movement. And also I had a sister who had cerebral palsy, and she didn't walk. She still doesn't walk to this day. So I think this was, for a young kid, you know, we were 5 years apart. Like, you wait for your sister to be able to walk, and she doesn't walk. So of course, no one, my parents tried their best to explain it to me. She has cerebral palsy, that's why she doesn't walk. But no one really thought I had someone in my house who could not move, you know? So this must have created questions in my mind, which then connected to when I saw these girls doing these weird movements that I didn't understand where they came from. So I think all of that at a very early age must have made me some sort of artist. Not to mention the South is a very complex place, you know, and
When did you move from the South to the North? Because you did end up in the North.
Yeah, I did end up in the North. I went to Yale.
Okay.
I was recruited by the Ivies, and my father was a Morehouse man. I don't know if you know what Morehouse is.
Absolutely.
Of course. So I was raised really to go to Morehouse. My father really wanted me to go to Morehouse because I don't know if you know, but Morehouse is called. It was especially during when schools were segregated. It was the elite black college school for men. It was Morehouse, and the women went to Spelman. And so that's when my father went to school. So he really wanted they took it very seriously. But I started I started getting the letters and was recruited for Harvard and these various schools, and I decided to go to Yale.
So you went to Yale?
Yeah.
I'm trying to sort of sort out how the step to actually moving from being a gymnast, looking at ballet dancers, to actually...
Well, it's very, I stopped gymnastics and I went into theater. I started doing theater around 11, I started doing theater. And the big thing I did was, which clearly, if you know my work, is that one of my teachers invited me to do this competition called History Day competition. Mm-hmm. It was a national one. I don't know if I have to look it up to find out if it still happens in the United States, but it's a competition where there's a history theme every year. Like the only one I always remember is conflicts and compromises, right? That was one year. And so there are different categories. There's papers, there's projects where you make a kind of like a thing that describes some sort of conflict and compromise in history. And there's also a performance category. Mm-hmm. There's solo performance and group performance. And my teacher invited me. She said, you should do this. And she showed me the thing. You make a group, and And so we made a group, and we came up with a little performance piece. And we went to district and won, and we were totally surprised we won. Because we just wanted to go somewhere to get out of our small town, And then we went to state, and we won state, first place. And then we didn't win at nationals. But then every year I won state and district for 6 years in a row.
Wow. Okay.
So it was something I lived for, to make these little history things. And so, of course, that's a bit, I think, what I do in dance still, is I'm making these history things and, speculative history things. And so that was probably a lot of my formative education. And of course, at college, I studied with people like Bell Hooks, who was my teacher. And she was actually Gloria Watkins at that point. She was not Bell. She was writing on the Bell Hooks, but she was Gloria Watkins, and she had a profound effect on me and my thinking. And a woman named Sylvia Boone also was there at a time, who was speaking a lot about femininity and African art. Mm-hmm. And I had a lot of post-colonial feminist studies, reading people like Trenti Minha, who probably is the person who had the most influence on my thinking of creativity and my work. Who teaches? She didn't teach me, but she still teaches at UC Berkeley. Is a Vietnamese American filmmaker, and her work is she writes. She's the only person I have discovered who's able to really to speak about theory and creativity, mm-hmm. in a way that made sense to me, in a way that took in philosophy, that took in cultural studies, took in feminist studies, but she's really able to talk about what it means to create. Like, what is it, and what does it mean to create within community? What does it mean to, poetically, what does it mean to dream? Mm-hmm. What does it mean to dream? What does it mean to dream community? What does it mean to participate in the dreaming of community? And it just, at 22, reading her between 20 and 22, it changed my life.
You moved into the dance community.
Yeah, barely.
What was that step? What pulled you into that? I mean, and as a dancer initially.
Well, I think it was very difficult for me because I didn't go to the girls' ballet class from age of 8. I went to theater. So I think it was, what happened was, in college at Yale, I had a director come from New York, came to direct a guest play, and he brought me back to my body. Like, he was doing these, Anne Bogart, I don't know if you all are familiar with her, New York director. She had this way of working called 6 Viewpoints, which was really body-oriented on shape and kinesthetic response and repetition, like very abstract ideas that were, because she developed it with a choreographer named Mary Overly. And he brought me back to my body because, of course, from 8 to 11, I had this intense training of gymnastics. I mean, because gymnastics is a very interesting thing. Like, when I look, I love it, but I can't imagine I was flipping. You know what I mean? Like, you're a kid, and you're doing flips and tricks, and and you're doing all these things where you could, like, literally break your neck, and and somehow, like, you're afraid, but at the same time you're a kid, so you go for it. You know what I mean? You don't realize how you have no perception of that. Okay, I could be paralyzed. And that it actually really happens. I don't know why to kids, but I mean, there are more mental things that happen. So he brought me back to my body, and I'd had this intense education of my body, and I just stopped wanting to speak on stage. Like I was just like, wow, okay, I have my body here. This is a resource.
Yeah.
And then I just started making work, which was what I called movement theater poetry. I was not thinking I was a choreographer. And then a friend said to me, she saw what I was trying to do, and she said, do you think maybe you're trying to be a choreographer? Because I was watching dance to be influenced, but I didn't think I'd be that. And she said, and I said, I hadn't thought of that word. Like I could, like me, myself, I could be an actor, I could be a director, I don't know, but a choreographer? Like, this had never occurred to me. And then literally, I just started reading everything I could, you know, the biographies, Martha Graham, Alvin Ailey, Isadora Duncan, everybody. I just started reading, and I was like, oh, yeah, I think that's what I want to be. But the problem is that when you read Martha Graham's biography, right, or autobiography, like it takes you what? Okay, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but it's real time. You know, Martha hit in her 40s. You know, that's real time.
That's real time, yeah.
You know, so when I decided to be, you know, I'm like 23, it was real time to get here. Well, I don't know, we won't say how many years that's been, but it's real time, you know, so it was not fast.
No, no, but I think it's really interesting, this parallel between real time and choosing, but also what you were saying about your sister. So also, besides the gymnast, but also the value of actually even being able to move and reflecting on what movement actually is in its very core. Yeah. That's something which is visible in your work. How did you, like, just in terms of movement and dance, what was your first path in terms of style, or school, or the first things you were doing, in which you felt like, okay, I'm really moving forward and expressing what I want to express? What type of work was that?
Ooh, sorry. I just had a Coke and I want more. Sorry. It's a very interesting question. I think I didn't have, you know, I was very heady. Okay, I'm coming out of Yale. Even though I have this body thing, I'm very theory. You know, I've studied with Bell, all these people. I was looking at a lot, seeing and reading a lot. And I was, you know, I studied at workshops, let's say, for short periods with Yvonne Rain or with Trisha Brown. I did it. I was sampling a lot of people. But I didn't find anyone who danced the way, or I felt that I had a style, you know? Like, I was conceptual. Like, it was clearly conceptual. Like, I was trying to work through minimalism. You know, I was trying, and I was aware, because I knew in college about the postmodern dance movement. So that was key, because I understood that there had been this movement in the 60s, in the late 60s, that was all about democratizing the body. And they had valued like walking, sitting, standing, running, and anyone could be a dancer. You know, if you could move, you could be a dancer. Even if you couldn't move, you could be a dancer. If you could speak, you could be a dancer. So that made me feel that, okay, I could create a space. I didn't have to study ballet for 20 years in order to be a dancer. Like the postmoderns had already set up that I could be. So I was really in that vein. I was really trying to work through minimalism, and I didn't know it was ridiculous. I didn't know what I was doing. And it was really, 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 really when there are two big breakthroughs, of course. Well, no, there are like 5 big breakthroughs. But the point you're talking about, of course, I went to my first fashion show live, and this is in '98, you know. And this is before the fact. Now, okay, the fashion shows are online, they're on TV, they're accessible, but they were not accessible at that time. You had to know someone, you had to have an invitation, it was a very kind of elite group of people who went to the live fashion shows. And a friend of mine was a fashion designer, a young guy, and he had done some costumes with me. He invited me to go to a Julia McDonald show. And I just was floored. I could not believe it. It was so much more. That was postmodernism to me. Like, this people walking, dressed in a certain way, like personifying societal roles and ideals, and it just, in music and lights and sound, and there's a lot of it. It's like, it was not, I mean, you have shows that are more simple, but this was a big show. So I just thought, wow, this is where postmodernism went. I was like, wow, and that blew my mind. And then after that, I went to another friend's boyfriend, he was the main designer at Calvin Klein. So he invited me to go to the Calvin Klein show that same season. And I will never, ever forget watching Giselle Bündchen come down the runway. Because literally, you see girl coming down the runway, and then Giselle comes and you're like, whoa. Because she knew something about moving. It was just like the way she moved, the way she crossed her feet, the rhythm, it was just, that's how she became, and actually, that's part of how she became a famous model, because she was noticed on the runway. And I just thought, wow, this is something. This is it. And then, I think it was those were the winter shows, because she was in scoop neck, I'll never forget, she was in a scoop neck, yellow tank top dress. So that was for spring, so that must have been, if she's in spring, that means the show was in the autumn, because it comes out in the stores in the spring. Okay, anyway, the point is, then the next thing I go to is my first voguing ball. A friend of mine is working for Gay Men's Health Crisis. He says, you want to come to the ball? I said, yeah, I'd love to go. I'd never gone. And Gay Men's Health Crisis sponsored the Love Ball, they called it. I don't know if they still have it, but it was like a big ball, and it was connected to AIDS awareness, and they were doing testing and everything. It was a big ball. It's a big ball, biggest ball of the year in New York. And I went, and I was just like, oh no. I could not, because for the first time in my life, I could not distinguish. At a certain point, you don't know, you have to understand, and I have to say this is very important, because we did not have the language that we have now. Now we have language about gender nonconformity, gender fluidity, but this did not exist. We're talking 1998. And so I could not distinguish. You lose track of who is male and who is female. You cannot, after a while, you just have to let it go. And there was something about this. And then there was this, they were doing voguing, which was this operational turning fashion poses into movement, into a kind of dance sequence. And so it was these three things lining up that I was just like, okay, let's do something. And it was really quite simple. I had the moment, the kind of, aha moment, is ironically enough, I had an invitation to perform at Judson Church. The famous Judson Church. And I was the new kid on the block. I didn't know anyone. There was two more experienced people on the roster that night. It's Monday Night by Movement Research, going back to Anne Bogart. Mary Overly was one of the founders of Movement Research. This poem started 6 Viewpoints. And I was in the studio trying to make my piece for Judson Church. And I thought, and I was in minimalism, remember? So I said, what if you made voguing minimalist? I said, okay. Because voguing is very flamboyant, we think of it that way. I said, okay, so I just made a little piece where I just walked, gazed, pose. Walk, gaze, pose. That was it. For 3 minutes to a song by Yaz called Ode to Boy. And I went and I had a little CD, you had those little CD players with the remote control. So I had on a pair of black leggings and a white T-shirt, very simple. And I really thought this was a fuck you piece. Because I thought nobody is gonna get this. They're not gonna understand. Because I was a bit arrogant, because they all thought no one was, they did not understand what I was trying to do, gonna do, anything. And because I didn't come from there, I was not going to Cunningham class every day. You know, I was not on this trip. So I didn't know anyone really, but they had given me this thing at Judson Church. And, but I was sure, for me, it was just like, fuck you, I'm gonna do this and show you, right? I literally, the thing comes down, I put the CD player, it goes back up. I go, I walk, I pose, I walk, I pose. It ends, the whole room stands up screaming, clapping.
Yeah.
I mean, I will never in my life hear applause like that, you know? It was, because I didn't see it coming. There was no way. And the funny thing is, you know what I did? I just got my bags and left. Like, you know, I didn't know anyone. So I didn't, you know, like now I would have talked to people and said, oh my God, they would have been like, oh, congratulations, that was such a wonderful piece. But I didn't know anyone, so I just left. You know, I didn't even watch the other two people. I just got up and left. But I knew I'd hit something.
Yeah.
So that was the answer to your question. It was really, I knew I had hit something in that area, that question of how to make voguing minimalist and this whole thing, I had hit something. And that's 1999, I present that piece. It's 21 years later before I'm able to synthesize style and have a style that I feel like, you know, I own in my body and, you know, through the research and everything. But that takes 21 years.
But the step, like, because you were saying you were very much a head person, you were reading all these theoretical books, and when did you actually theoretically start to understand what actually happened on that day in Judson Church?
I mean, I don't know. It takes a lifetime to understand. You know, it's not one. I knew. Let me put it this way. I knew at that moment. Like I said to you, I knew I'd hit something because it was undeniable. I mean, I hit a nerve, right? And then when I start to research and to understand that this Judson Church movement and this voguing movement were happening at the same time, and one was uptown New York and one was downtown New York, and no one had ever addressed, it was waiting. It was not me. You know, anybody who had taken that was gonna change the thing because it was just waiting. It was just waiting because Judson had been, this postmodern dance movement had been so revered for its neutrality and democratizing of the body. And here was this other thing uptown which was like also questioning the neutrality and the democratizing of the body. And of course there was this whole American thing of like, okay, because these people were Black and Latino and LG, you know, gay and bi and so. But so were these white people downtown at Judson Church. I mean, Yvonne was lesbian. You know what I mean? Steve Paxton was a faggot. I mean, so it was, but they were on the neutral body. But these other brown people uptown were saying, baby, there's no neutral body. My body is never gonna be neutral. So once I realized that this historical dialogue had not been addressed, it was a no-brainer. And I mean, but people spit on me, like literally, I mean, almost literally. But I knew that it was a no-brainer. It was just time before people would say, okay, we have to look at this, you know. But in the beginning, for sure, it was really, really hard. And it's about 2000, I don't know, when is Antigone Senior at Tanzim August? Well, I can't remember what year that is. Maybe it's 2000, later than 13. 13 is made to measure. Maybe 15. No, it's true. 13, around 2013, 14 is when my series starts to be shown. People are starting to take it more seriously. And it's then that, but it took years. I mean, that's, you know, it was 99 when I saw that. But it takes almost 15 years before the dance field really recognizes what I'm doing. But I knew it was a no-brainer. I knew it was not long after, maybe around 2001 or 2, I knew it was a no-brainer. I knew it was just time. I knew it. This I could feel. But I didn't, but what was interesting is I did not feel that it was particular to me. I felt anyone who had seen that theoretical connection could have grabbed it and ran with it. It wasn't. I mean, I was not a voguer.
No.
You know what I mean? My legacy was more the postmodern dance legacy.
And you were saying, so like the idea of there is no neutral body.
Yeah.
There's no way this body's going to be neutral. I'm seeing some kind of connection with Butoh. Correct me if I'm wrong, right? Because that also came like as a more or less an answer to dance in Japan at the time in the 50s, modern dance, ballet, classical, where they felt not seen at all in that dance world and decided to go to Noh and Kabuki, and use that as a source. And then is that, I mean, because I think it's, of course, you worked with Vogue as a major source of inspiration, as a theoretical source of inspiration, but then later on with Butoh as well. And you brought those, you connected them through your work. Do you see that connection in that respect?
Can they hear me? Can you still hear me? Okay. In which respect?
That you more or less answered you said that it was sort of, I mean, it was the fuck you moment was saying this body is never going to be neutral.
Yeah.
And Butoh, in a way, also represented a fuck you moment in Japan in dance.
Yeah. The Butoh thing is very complicated because I think I was really startled by Butoh the first time. It's interesting. I forget what day it is. They would show my first, before I become a dancer. I'm just starting to take kind of dance class, but I'm still not knowing that I want to be a choreographer. I see a film called Dance of Darkness that's about Butoh, and I'm just like, I couldn't. It really tore something inside of me. Like, it was really violent and vulgar, and I didn't. But something, I had to keep looking at it. But it was like something you like wrestling.
Yeah.
Watch, you know. It was like this, and I always watched it, but I don't know, I was not so... it's better? Okay, good. Okay. I can take this off?
I think so, yeah.
You hear me? Okay. So, it wasn't, I mean, at this point, I was quiet. I mean, the series had kind of been celebrated, this voguing and early postmodern dance, and I needed to change my work. I thought, I kind of had it, I will never forget. I mean, I have to tell a little anecdote about this because I will never forget, I was the editor of a journal in New York, and I had the privilege of interviewing Trisha Brown. And I wanted to talk to, and of course, I'm interviewing Trisha, and I asked her about Set and Reset. And she doesn't want to talk about Set and Reset. She wants to talk about what she's doing now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? She doesn't want to talk about the piece she made long ago that everybody wants to talk about. And I never forget that. And I kind of had, but I had made my peace. I said, okay, you're gonna always be known for this series. And I was okay with that, you know? But I felt that I wanted to change. And it was really just about change. And I thought the way to change was through the fashion spectacle of my work. And I came up with this, through some research, I understood that there had been this moment in 1983 when the Japanese designers like Rei Kawakubo of Konegason, Yohji Yamamoto, and Issey Miyake had come to the Paris shows. And the way the press talked about this moment was very similar to the way they talked, the dance people, Westerners, talked about Butoh, this kind of post-Hiroshima aesthetic, this kind of very dark, monochromatic, Japanese, like post-war. And I thought, that's really interesting, but was Rei Kawakubo influenced by Butoh? It was just a research question. I always wanted to go to Japan. My mother's grandmother, my mother's mother's grandmother was Japanese. So I always had this, I want to go to Japan. And I just came, I said, okay, well, let's ask Rei Kawakubo if she was influenced by Butoh, because Rei is the generation of the 70s, and the Butoh people are the generation of the 60s. So, yeah, I came up with this fellowship. I came up with this research I did to go to Japan and play 6 Degrees of Separation. You know this game?
Yeah.
So, but what I didn't, to me, this was like new historicity, like a kind of, you know, instead of reading books, you go you play this game and try to get to Rei Kawakubo to ask her this question. But of course, I didn't really want to meet Rei Kawakubo. I want to have interesting conversations with you. You tell me, okay, we talk about Butoh and Rei Kawakubo, and then you say, you meet this other friend because I think that, she knows somebody who works in the company with Rei, and then I go, it's like this. And throughout that, I didn't realize that the people in Tokyo would take it very seriously, and they really would try to help me meet Rei Kawakubo. And I was kind of refusing to go to the archives of Hijikata, who was a founder of Butoh.
Yeah, Butoh, yes.
And the Saison, I didn't understand all of this at the time, but one of the main sponsors of Hijikata's work was the Saison Foundation. And even the last theater where he showed his work was the Saison Theater, and the Saison Fellowship I was on. But I refused to go to the Hijikata archive. And they kept asking me, but, don't you want to go to the Hijikata archives? Would you like to go? And I was like, no, I want to do this new form of historicity and research. And archives are very traditional, And they kept asking me. And finally, one day, they asked me, and I realized, it dawned on me that you're being super rude. These people brought you all the way from the US, and they, I didn't even have to know the other part. It was just like, you're refusing to go to the archive of the founder. What's it going to hurt you to go? Just go. So I said, okay, I go. And I go, and the man who runs the archive is a man named Morrison, and he's still there. He's kind of left. There's someone else there now, but he's still there all the time. Anyway, he gives me this CD with the pieces they have on DVD, a DVD, and I put in, for some reason, the last piece that Hijikata made. It's called Tohoku Kabuki Plan 4, and I just couldn't believe what I saw. It was again like that moment of the fashion show. It was just like something went off in my head, and I couldn't believe, because I had seen a lot of Butoh, but I'd never seen anything like this aesthetically in any art. And it was that moment, it was Stendhal moment, when you're just like, you see art that changes your life. Yeah. And you see an aesthetic that you will never be the same again, because it opens up so much that you didn't know existed, because just aesthetically, your senses were just like turned around. And I just knew I had to stop and educate myself. And that's been, that was 2012, and now we're in 25. And so I just stopped and went into Hijikata land for 13 years, I guess. Yeah. But it was not the same fuck you thing. I mean, yes, they were like, I don't know if they were like, fuck you. I mean, they had to be. They were a bit like this. They were very radical and very doing their own thing and doing a lot of experimental things. But I was just really profoundly shaken by the aesthetic, and I thought it was, but it takes me a long time to unravel what it was that touched me. It took me for a long time to understand, and I was, to be a part of a kind of thought questioning, which now we realize that probably Butoh was very also inspired by Haitian Vaudou. And this kind of, so that what I was seeing when I saw that film Dance of Darkness, that this kind of writhing, this kind of like violence, it's not so far from a Haitian Vaudou rituals, So there was, the connections are quite strong, and I think that, it's the boot. I mean, I'm in it, as you know, and I'm ending this research, so I don't have so much perspective on it, but it made me a dancer. I would say that I was a choreographer before, and it's through those 13 years of research into Butoh and early modern dance that I think I've become a dancer. And last night, I had the honor and incredible privilege to dance to the live music of Craig Taborn. And I just thought, I'm still waking up from that experience, but the one thing I came away with, it's gonna sound probably horrible, but I thought, wow, what a privilege it is that I get to dance. And like, wow, I had an hour where like people were watching me fulfill a dream. And that's something, I don't know what to do with that, because it really was, there was something, I hope people got something from it. and that it's I don't know, it gave something. I tried to give as much as I could to the people that were there, but honestly, I just thought, wow, like that's such a privilege. You know, I don't know where to go from there. You know, like it's like when you meet your music in the room and it's so like it's like underneath your skin and you know, but I had to go through Butoh to get there, to feel confident enough to be this dancer who could stand in front of people and like meet a musician on stage that you kind of secretly have this, you honor so much, and then just be okay enough with who you are as a dancer to be able to have that on stage in front of people. That's kind of far out there for me, you know. But Butoh really gave me that.
It's amazing. It also feels like very much a full circle moment, you know, given what you were saying about your youth in Georgia, and you know, and the blues and the language and Greg Taborn, of course, knows that, and he's taken that. He's in his way, he's taken a journey with that as well. So it sounds like really incredible. I was just wondering, because you also have, of course, your famous piece, your Keith Jarrett piece, which was, this is a recording, you heard it a long time ago and you knew you had to do something with it. And it's essentially the same thing. It's somebody on a stage improvising on a piano, but this is a record, you heard it many times, and now it's in the moment. That must be also kind of that you're able actually to address the moment in that way. Before, you took a long journey to get to the point where you could actually work with Jarrett and his music.
Yeah, I mean, it took me, I remember hearing Keith, I must have been like, this around that same time, 99, 2000, when I'm in New York, just getting to New York. I remember being in Tower Records. And I don't know if you know this, remember this, when they used to have the listening stations in the record store, and you could go and you could press the CD player and you know, it was like that. And I saw this album cover and the man with the big afro.
Yeah.
And I heard, I will never forget, again, hearing the Cone Concert, Part 1, I just started weeping because I did not know people made music like that. It was like, it was blues, it was gospel, it was classical, it was modern, it was pop. I don't know, it was just, I couldn't put a direction on it, but to me it was like, how did that exist in the world and I didn't know about it? So it was just like, because it was like, again, it was like, it's like a bit, like, it's like this with Craig, it's like coming home. It's like it was waiting for you, you know. That's my grandma saying, sometimes you just got to come home, baby. Yeah. It's waiting for you. It's just home. You know, she would say these kind of things to me all the time, like about things. Just come on home. Like, you want some sugar cane? Just come on home. You know, it's like, it's this sense of familiarity that's in the spirit, and that is such a part of, it took me this takes a long time to understand, because there's a certain kind of way in which slavery in the United States left its mark on people, obviously from trauma. So they have to rethink the bonds. When your family can be separated, sold, taken away, raped, whatever the cruelties of slavery are, the notion of home has to be constantly redefined. You know what I mean? So in this linguistic venture in which my grandmother would always help me to understand that coming home was not a physical place, but coming home was a place you could imagine, was a place you could create, was a place that was in history waiting for you, was a place that was in the future, but after your death, where people are waiting for you. So I think that, I even though, okay, I don't always ascribe to all of that, because I'm not my grandmother, right? I grew up in a total different time, but I understood clearly when I heard Jarrett, it was coming home, you know? And I knew I could not do it. I knew. I was young. I was too young. I knew I didn't have the chops to dance, to put on Keith Jarrett. And even when I decided to do it, I had to be like a little tricked to do it, you know, but I'm so happy I did it. And now, the funny thing is, I think I will be more known for that piece, of course, it's my most widely seen piece. It's not the series. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's really funny because I had made my piece with the other thing, and now I have to make my piece with the Jarrett, but I'm okay with it.
And maybe you'll be making something else later on. There's a long way to go.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm thoroughly enjoying this conversation.
Me too.
But I have to open it up
you.
to you guys too. So, does anybody have any questions or remarks?
It's nice to see you now.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Wait, I'm looking.
No.
It's almost a harsh interruption because I was taken by conversations.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I saw the clock's a terrible thing. I saw the clock. I knew I was going to stop, and then I wouldn't have asked anything from anybody, so I felt guilty about that. But I understand. Yeah. But anybody, a remark, a feeling, a word. Yes, in back.
Congratulations for the conversation. I wanted to ask you about the South. What does it mean, the word South, to you?
South?
Yeah.
When I speak of the South, I'm really talking about Southern American culture, Georgia. You know what I mean? Like I'm speaking. I mean, I'm not speaking in the general South of like, you know, which can be another thing. I'm really talking about. We use this word to talk about this, you know, below the Mason-Dixon line. You know, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, kind of. Texas is the South, but it's a different kind of South. But it's mainly those states, and it has a history because the South had slavery. I mean, those were the slave states. So it has this history and this culture, and I'm from there. I grew up there. So and that was something that was always tricky for me because people always assumed I was a Northerner because, of course, I was in New York for many years, but I'm really a Southern boy. I'm really from a Southern small town. So it's a part of my identity and my... I grew up in the South, and you can take the boy out of the South, but you can't really take the South out of the boy.
And do you think maybe that there is a global South or
a
South which actually are connected all over the world?
Yeah, I mean, but you know, it's interesting because the global. I would almost say that Miami is in the global South, and I'm not sure Georgia is. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? No?
I'm Spain.
Yes. Yes.
In kind of, but at the same time, I'm also North in relation with other Souths. So this kind of hierarchical relations between different regions of the world.
But don't you? But the globe. If you come to my show tomorrow, there's a magazine called South that Marina Focadidis, made, and it's about the global. And she made this magazine about the global South, and. Again, I think that's why I say Miami, because Miami is connected. There's a lineage through South America, through Spain, through the Mediterranean, like these countries that are different than, say, the northern countries like Germany, Scandinavia, they're south of the equator. But Georgia is a different kind of South, I think, because actually we're connected to England, we're connected to Ireland. Like this South was colonized by the English and the Irish. And it's not so, and that's why Texas is different. Texas might be in the global South because Texas was colonized, had connections to Spain, whereas Georgia did not. I mean, Florida more, and that's why I say, I think, the Spanish were in Florida, yes. But the Spanish I don't think they were in Georgia.
In fact, Georgia I mean, the Georgia Sea Islands
Yes.
are connected to Suriname, which is where I'm from.
The Suriname, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
The
they're
Gullah.
connected. The Gullah.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
that's linguistically, people who study African American languages actually come to Suriname to study the root.
Yeah.
And which is a different kind of South. Definitely,
Yeah.
it's not the Latin South.
No, it's not.
It's not, no.
And but I'm sorry, we're gonna go on a little tangent here, because my sister, the one I told you about, her babysitter spoke Gullah, and she Gicha.
Yeah,
They used to call it
Gicha, yeah.
And my mother, my mother did not want my sister to grow up speaking Gicha.
Yeah.
You know, because she would, the babysitter, of course, was speaking Gicha to her. And I couldn't. I mean, you can kind of understand what they were saying, but anyway. Sorry,
Yeah.
sidebar.
Anybody else? Yes, 2 actually over here. 3 actually. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Hi, thank you. I'm really inspired by you. In the beginning, you said doing nothing is very important, and yeah, it was really. I was like, okay, well, that's interesting because normally people are like, you have to work hard and stuff.
You do.
So I have a question for you. Did you ever felt like a pressure to create, or did you felt the hurry, or did you just slow it down, or wasn't it in your?
I feel the
your
pressure
culture?
right now to create in a hurry. But no one put me in that position but me. Yeah, of course. Okay, let's break your question down a little bit. The first thing is, do I feel in a hurry sometimes to create? Yeah, I function on deadlines, you know. So yeah, you have these deadlines and you set up these agreements with people, and you have to show up with something. But I like to work. I worked very much from my heart, so I cannot prepare. You know, I'm an expressionist. So it's not, you just bring what you have, you know, and you have to accept that. There are deadlines, and you have to, you have to deliver. So far I'm pretty good at it. But right now I set up this situation where I kind of had to present things after working on them for 5 days, 10 days, 12 days, and it's really nerve-wracking in a way, but I like the fast and dirty, because I think fast and dirty creates something that you can't create in this long and slow. I love long and slow too, but I also like fast and dirty. And so it's just about being comfortable enough with yourself to create different situations that can be creatively inspiring. And yes, it is about knowing. Honestly, the Romeo almost killed me. Literally, mentally, I love it because it was supposed to be that in a way. I said to them, I wouldn't take anything away from my Romeo experience. I don't know if any of you saw this piece that it's a beautiful piece, but it really took the bill came early. You know what I'm saying? It's like usually the bill comes after, but the bill was coming. It was just like. And I had a really hard time, you know. It was really, I felt very lonely, and it was a pressure. We all felt the pressure of this situation, and it was a lot. I dealt with it, but it was. I will never forget it. I was suffering, and in this, and if you know my work, I did not. I was suffering because I did not want to give more of myself to the piece. I was like, no, I'm sorry, I've given a lot. No, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it. No, I'm not gonna do it. And I finally, I remember leaving Zurich, just to explain to you, and I went to Athens for a weekend, and to my house there, and I came back, and I just could give my heart again. But I needed to protect, there was something in me that for weeks could not do it. I'd made the piece, but I could see it was missing. It didn't have heart. And I did not want to give my heart again. I was like, no, please don't ask that of me. So I literally would go home every night and drink alone. I mean, I'm being very honest with you, because I could not, to get myself to sleep. That's what I had to do to sleep. And then I'd get up and go to rehearsal, and I was just out of it. Because I did not once again, I was like, no, why do I have to do this? Why me? I don't want to give more of myself to this thing. But I could see it needed it, but I didn't want to do it, you know? And then I just said, okay, just go to your house. I went to my house, I came back, and I just gave it. But I don't know why I couldn't give it before. I don't know why. Maybe that's just the path I had to take. So it's really, you know, that I say that because you have to take care of yourself and protect yourself, and sometimes you can't protect yourself, and you still have to do it. You know what I mean? I couldn't walk away. And thank God I love the piece, and I see that it needed time, and I needed to, you know, to. It's okay. You'll get there. It'll come. You don't have to worry. You know, it'll get there. And it was on. And I tell you. So this is very interesting about the Romeo. You don't know. They were not with me. My dancers were not with me. My dramaturg was not with me. People were not convinced about the piece. They were like, my dramaturg was like, oh, it's too much piano music. Why don't you do this? Don't you do that? The dancers were all like, when are you gonna do the pop, you know, breakout? You know, I had never experienced, and in the Schauspiel House it's very funny because you have these days when the house people can come see the rehearsals. And people were coming to see that they had opened it. And usually everyone's like, oh my God, I love your piece. Yeah. Nobody was saying anything to me. Nothing. You know, and the director of the theater was sneaking into the rehearsals. It was a nightmare for me. You cannot imagine. And I would go to these meetings and people would tell me what they didn't like. But I tell you, the only thing I had was my heart. And I knew, I don't care what anyone said, I don't care what they said about the piano music, I loved it. And I knew, I said, you know what? Only thing you can do from this is to do the same thing you're doing when you had those 4 jobs, is you can only show people what you love and why you love it. You can't do it for somebody. Your vision is yours. It's that I can't have your vision. I can't. I can only show you what I see and feel. And it was so, I will never forget it, because 7 o'clock, there was a premiere at 8 o'clock. 7 o'clock, the technicians made me stop working. And I'm never like this. I'm done 2-3 weeks, and I'm done very early, and we work on the performativity. But this was like, I had to give the speech, you know, like why the piece was important. The dancers were all looking at me. You know, it was horrible. Everybody, all the co-producers were there to see the piece. It was a big. I don't know. I didn't even think. At that point, I was not even thinking about whether or not I was going to succeed or not. I just kept working. I just said the only thing you can do is keep working. And I'll never forget it, because it ended, and the applause. It was not like the applause at Judson, but there was applause. And I remember coming into the lobby, and people were like, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. We love it. It's so beautiful. And all the dancers were like, yeah.
Well, I think this is like a...
Can you believe?
I think this is like this is the perfect note actually to end the conversation,
it's
because
so
we
beautiful.
have to. But also the point you're making is fundamental and extremely important. Thank you for sharing it with us.
Yes, but I don't want to dismiss. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. No.
The question is, you got to stay with. I mean, the answer is you got to stay with your heart. For me, I have to stay with my heart. That's it. That's the only thing I know. And like I said the other night, as long as the heart is getting wider, you're on the right track, because the heart has no dimensional limits. You know what I mean? It can always get wider. There's no limit. So for me, as long as my heart is getting wider, I'm on the right track.
Well, on that note, I'm going to close off the evening. Go see his work.
Thank you.
You have time to go see the work. Look it up on the Holland Festival site. There are a lot of opportunities to see his work, to see what his work is triggering in the Asbestos Hall area. And thank you very much for being together with us in this moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trajal.
I'm sorry, I'm talking so much.
No, it was wonderful. Really, thank you.